G'day and welcome to the Off-Chain Podcast. Don here with you. Interesting episode today. Our guest is Dr. Jeffrey Funk, author of Unicorns, Hype and Bubbles. Dr. Funk has a wealth of experience as a consultant, a retired professor, written 5 books and over 50 research articles about emerging tech, startups and investments. So we're really excited to have Dr. Funk on the show to talk about the big tech AI hype cycle, where we are in this latest narrative, and why 90% of unicorn startups are actually unprofitable. Great show. Let's dive in. Where are we at the moment in AI globally? ChatGPT 5 is out. Grok 4 came out a little while ago and they were thinking, we're leading the pack. Chat 5's now out, leading the pack, although people are pretty concerned with Chat 5 for various reasons. What's your perspective on where we're at, if you can take a snapshot of where we're at right now?
Well, I think people are very concerned, and you look on Reddit and look at people evaluating GPT-5, and they don't like it. And the big problem for me is not whether it's better or worse than GPT-4. It is better. The problem is that it's not a lot better. Remember, this is 2 years. It's been 2 years since GPT-4 came out, and we've been hearing that entire time from a lot of people, not just Sam Altman, but a lot of people, that exponential change. Things are really getting better fast. And so we were really expecting something good. And then GPT-5 isn't that great. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, then OpenAI isn't going to win. But there's a bigger message. It says that it's really hard to improve these models at this fast rate of exponential change that they've been promising. And that in reality, we aren't seeing this fast, rapid exponential change. We're seeing something really slow. And what that means is that it's not going to get better. It's not going to get to AGI. So Sam Altman has been talking about this AGI, artificial general intelligence, for a very long time. Other people too, Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen, a lot of these people have. It's not happening. And it's funny that Altman said a couple of days ago that he doesn't like the term anymore.
Yeah, right. Now that he can't do it.
Yeah, he can't do it. He was asked, well, does GPT-5 bring us closer to AGI? He's like, I don't like that term. Even though he's used it like at least 100 times in the last year. I mean, he's using it constantly. He's not the only one. And now suddenly he doesn't like it because it's clear that GPT-5 isn't that much better than GPT-4. And he just realized it. He didn't realize it like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Apparently he gave out the ChatGPT-5 to various people to get reactions before he publicly released it. And those included people who really love ChatGPT, people like Tyler Cohen and Ethan Mollick, and they said, oh, it's great. So this is a big problem. Now, why is this a big problem? Because right now, OpenAI is losing a lot of money. So is Anthropic and all these startups. And they're losing a lot of money because they don't charge enough. Their prices are too low. So their prices are very low, right? Now, what that means is they price things low, and then people use it a lot. And what if they raise the prices? And clearly from the performance increase, the lack of a big performance increase for GPT-5, they're going to have to raise the prices because the performance didn't get better. Now, apparently it's a little more economical because it helps users switch between these different modes and switch and use some of the cheaper models, the simpler models, when the complex ones are needed. So these things are good. They might save a little money, but still, it's big money that they need to save because they're losing this big money. And what happens if they raise prices? Who gets hurt? Well, the cloud service providers. The cloud service providers are making money because OpenAI is selling its service at a price much lower than its costs. And what are those costs? It's the costs they have to pay cloud service providers, to process their models.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a big problem here. And Anthropic already announced price increases. Everybody got mad. Apparently, Anthropic said that users are paying either $20 there's free services, obviously losing money, $20 a month, where they people can use the service more than so that it's so much that it'll lose money. Even at $200 a month, they will make money. And Anthropic said that some of the users, because it's unlimited, we're using it 24/7, and we're incurring tens of thousands of costs that Anthropic has to pay to the cloud service provider. So the cloud service providers are happy. They're, keep using our service, but Anthropic will never make money then. So they had to raise prices. But that's going to cause people to use it less, which will then cause Microsoft and other cloud service providers to make less money. So ChatGPT-5 didn't solve this. May have made it a little better because it automatically switches people to lower cost models, but there's going to have to be more price increases in the future.
Do you think we're right to expect that kind of? I mean, we expect it because that the CEOs of these companies are touting how much better these new models are going to be. But obviously, when Chat 3 or 555 came on the market, it was revolutionary, right? Seismic.
Yeah.
As humans, we were like, wow, I can't believe we can do this now on my phone, on my laptop. This is amazing. And then Chat 4 comes out, and again, wow, this is amazing. It can do even more now. Yeah. Are we right to expect that level of advancement every year or every 18 months or every 2 years?
Well, apparently not. OpenAI has been kind of signaling that the GPT-5 would be released real soon for at least a year, and it hasn't come out. And most people insiders are claiming that's because it wasn't that good. They realized it wasn't that good, and so they were holding off. And lo and behold, it finally comes out, and it isn't that good. And people have been pointing out that these technologies experience diminishing returns, particularly when you're trying to get to, very high levels of accuracy. It's very hard to do this. There was a study, this METR, I forget what the acronym means. They just released a study in which software engineers were timed on software tasks, and the ones who used a coding assistant, the engineers who used a coding assistant, took longer, 90% longer than the ones who didn't use a coding assistant. And why? Because there were errors that needed fixing. Gotcha. Those errors take a lot of time to fix, and it takes longer to fix an error that comes from an AI assistant than doesn't. Why? Because if you are doing the coding yourself, you go through it, and as you're doing it, you're thinking about, well, I could do this way, I could do it that way. And then when it makes an error, you go, oh, I know where that is. But now the AI assistant is making the error, and you're like, well, what happened? Where did it make that error? It takes longer to find it. Now, I don't know how many errors they had to find. They didn't release that, but they basically, it has been released, but I didn't watch it. And apparently it takes a long time to fix some of these errors. And so we really need less errors. How many errors are there? We need to figure that out. Now, there was another study this METR did on what's the length of tasks that can be completed by agentic AI at a 50% accuracy. Mm-hmm. And it showed this dramatic increase in the number of tasks that could be completed with 50% accuracy over time. And this METR said, well, the reason why we're doing this study is because we know that if you look at one task, like software coding, and I think most of these are some were software coding text, there was a variety. There's diminishing returns. As you try to push to 100% accuracy, there's diminishing returns. So that's why they do this. How many tasks can agentic AI achieve at a 50% accuracy? Now, first, okay, at a 50% accuracy. Yeah, at a 50% accuracy. And the first thing is 50% is nothing. That's like, look at a coin.
Yeah.
It's not. And they said that, but it's doubling, the number of tasks is doubling every 7 months. But again, it's so what? And a lot of people made a big deal of us. Oh, we're going to get to AGI this way, and they extrapolated in the future to see how many tasks you could complete. Well, of course it's huge. But the thing you got to remember is that 50% is very low.
Yeah.
And METR has specifically done this study because they know that there's diminishing returns for a given task. It's very hard to go to 99.99999%, which apparently Google and Amazon have for uptimes. Over 25 years, they've achieved that, 30 years. It takes a long time. And the same thing with cars. That's what you need for cars, because that's what most human-driven cars, they don't have that many accidents. Maybe there's too many, and you could say we need to make this better, but it's very hard to get there. And I always say that few people understand exponential change. I mean, the tech bros are always saying this. So no one understands how fast it is. No one understands. Well, you got to do the math for it. I've done a lot of math, like this kind of math, because I've written some of the best papers on exponential change. One of them, what drives exponential improvements, in California Management Review 12 years ago. And you see, let's say that you double every 7 months the accuracy of these. Let's say that, or you have the mistake rate. So you got 1/2, right? That's how many errors. That's what accuracy you have for this study that was done. Okay, you go 1/2, you go 1/4, you go 1/8, 1/16, and so on. What do you get to? After 10 doublings, you get to 1,000th. That would take you 50% to 98.9%. Now, you're not going to get there because there's diminishing returns. They already admitted that. Okay, so you got this 99.9%. Well, that's pretty good. It takes 10 doublings and it takes 7 months. So it's about 7 years. But if it takes, maybe it takes a lot longer. Maybe it takes 14 years. So what we're looking at is something that, and that's, remember, for the same task, number of tasks. That is an increase. So these guys they're making all these assumptions that, just because we achieved it at 50%, well, look at how many tasks we're going to do at 50% in 7 years. Well, it's not going to work that way. It's going to take a long time. You're talking about decades before, even with these assumed exponential movements, it'll take decades to get where we want to go. And of course, you look at GPT-5 and that it comes out. It's like, yes, it's not going to happen. So to me,
how should we be thinking about AI then in its current phase, and even where we're going, as you just mentioned, at a much slower pace? People like Sam backing away from using the terminology like AGI. How should we be thinking about that from a market perspective, when the market keeps rewarding companies like OpenAI? If 90% of these unicorn startups are really unprofitable, and in fact losing money, significant money, with the cost of compute and whatnot, how should we be thinking about, from an investment perspective, from a maybe capital allocation perspective, and even just from a personal use of AI or company business use of AI, how should we be thinking about it differently to how we're thinking about it now?
Well, I think investors should be very careful. It's obvious that this company doesn't really have a road to profitability, and the whole thing could collapse. If investors don't put in money. OpenAI raised money in April, $40 billion. Although $30 billion of that was contingent on becoming a for-profit company. Well, apparently it's not going to become a for-profit company. Microsoft is opposed to that. So they got $10 billion. Then they just raised money this month, or there looks like they're going to. Well, that means they probably ran through most of that $10 billion in 3 months. So you look at their predictions about how much more revenues they're getting and how much losses. Well, something better is just looking at how much money they apparently have burned through in the last 3 months. And then they got like 7.8 billion this month. So how long is it going to take to run through the 7.8 billion? It's probably going to take less time than it took to run through the 10 billion. So they're going to have to go back and ask investors for money. Maybe they'll get the money. I don't know. But clearly, and if they don't, then what happens? A lot of the AI world is based on, open AI models. And if that suddenly collapsed, it would be serious. Now, if you're a user, they're underpricing their service, and okay, you go ahead and use it. And so I can see why some people are so ecstatic about ChatGPT, because it's so cheap, right? You can burn through $20,000 of product, and you only get paid $200. $200. Wow. Yeah. So you love it. And that's kind of where we are, is that people base their opinions on AI based on, well, I use it and I love it. And it's important. There's one data point. You use it and you love it. And a lot of people say this, and I don't doubt them that they love it. A lot of people say to me, well, I use it and made all these websites. It's going to affect everybody. I'm thinking, are websites the only work in the world?
Yeah.
What about all the agricultural and mining and manufacturing and healthcare? There's a whole bunch of other things people do. But most people, all they do is look and they say, I use it and I love it. Everybody's going to love it. Well, wait a minute. Writing isn't an output for many industries. It's not an output for mining industries, manufacturing industries, agriculture, a whole set of industries. It is not the output. Now, you might say video is the output for ads, right? And movies. So there, I'm much more optimistic about it. There, I expect that users are going to continue to increase their use of it. And a lot of it is getting better because, errors aren't that important for someone who's putting ads in a YouTube video, right?
Sure.
If there's a few mistakes, who cares? If you get in a full-length big movie, well, then you have a more discerning audience. Audiences will get mad if they see something that doesn't look right. But still, I'm optimistic there. And so, in summary, right, investors have to be careful. Users, if you're getting charged hardly anything, well, go ahead. You have to be careful about building some system in your company that's based on the assumption that prices won't go up. Well, that's a mistake. They probably will. So you better assume that they're going to go up.
Yes. Yeah. This morning, so I was getting some stitches pulled out of my ear at the doctor. The nurse, we're at a conversation and she asks me, when should I think about buying or when should I think about selling certain shares? And we're talking about AI specifically because she was very hyped about AI. And she says, are we in a bubble? Should I be selling? What are we doing? Where are we thinking about right now? And I said, I am speaking to the pro about this today. I'll let you know next time I come in. Where are we? Are we in bubble territory? Are we just about to pivot into something else? Are we?
Not even you have to look at these revenues that's in the industry. People always say, well, we went through it in 1999, the 2000 bubble, and so this is nothing. Well, in 2000, if you look at the revenues for 2000, so the bubble popped kind of early in 2000, but let's just look at revenues for 2000. It was about $1.5 trillion in 2024 dollars. So this is in an article that my co-author Gary Smith and I published in Market Watch, and we've been showing this, but all this is all easy data yet because this is a long time ago and it's all available. To use the internet, what did you have to do? You had to buy a PC. Now, some people already had PCs, usually at companies, but for many consumers, they had to buy a PC. They also had to get an internet subscription. They weren't cheap. People also bought e-commerce. They bought things on the internet, e-commerce and things. You add all those up and you get $1.5 trillion. What do you get for ChatGPT? Well, last year it was about 5 billion for AI software. I think it was about 20 billion, about 20 billion for data cloud revenues. But remember, the cloud revenue people are doing well because OpenAI is selling their services under the price, for a very low price. And then they have to pay. OpenAI has to pay the data cloud service providers. So this isn't really this is far worse than 2000, really bad, the amount of money. It's all based on this assumption that, we're going through exponential change. All these models are going to get so good. They're going to put all these people out of work. And then these companies are going to make so much money. And we look at GPT-5 and we say, wait a minute, it isn't so much better than GPT-4. Yeah, it's better, but it isn't this exponential improvement that is needed and that was promised. So yes, we're in a bubble, a big one.
On Chat 5, do you think it was the promise where they underdelivered that is the problem? Or do you think it is the iteration the progressive iteration is slowing down. So, or the amount better Chat 5 is to Chat 4 is much slower or smaller than Chat 4 was to 3 and certainly 3 to 2.
Yeah.
Well, is it the promise or is it our expectation?
It's both. It's both. They were making promises, and investors have high expectations because of these promises. That's what the increase in the share price is, about $10 trillion in increases in share price for the Magnificent Seven since January 2023. $10 trillion. So what's that based on? Well, it's not based on heavy revenues for OpenAI and these companies. It's based on, well, that we think all these cloud service providers are just, their revenues are going to keep increasing.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they're not considering that the reason why the revenues are high is because OpenAI is setting prices that are too low. So it has to pay the cloud service providers. It's not these final users paying. In some cases, it's final users. It's companies who are developing AI models and things. But a lot of it is just it's a lot of consumers. I mean, it's a lot of students using it to cheat on their homework, people writing emails and things, and the people wouldn't be doing those things if the prices were higher. It's also coders. People are coding, using it for coding, even though because they think it's better. And for some of them, it probably is. It depends on how complex the tax is. But that study that I cited, MERA, that it's not. It creates a lot of errors. So it's not going to be used successfully on a wider basis unless there's exponential change, and there isn't.
Yeah.
So everybody's got this high expectation it's going to take over the world. And this has existed so many times for AI in the past, right? You go back to iRobot in 1920s, this Czech play. People have had this outsized expectation that robots are going to take over. By the way, I did my PhD dissertation on economics of robots in 1984.
Oh, all right.
That was at Carnegie Mellon in the engineering department. So I believed it. Why not? I believed it. And I met Joseph Engelberger, who is the president of Unimation, and he helped me get a lot of cost data. And, it looks so great. Well, it didn't happen. And once I started working, I started realizing it was going to happen. But nevertheless, I was an optimist about a lot of technologies after that because of Moore's Law and things. It was really in the 2010s when I was teaching a course in economics of new technologies at National University of Singapore that I realized that a lot of these technologies weren't going through rapid improvement. So this is a long list of, a lot of, nanotechnology and superconductors and all of these things. And then I started learning by mid 2010s that startups are losing money. There really wasn't any big startups. If you look at startups founded since 2005, you would really only find one really successful, and that's Uber. And Uber is successful mostly because it was able to raise prices. Why was it able to raise prices? Because during the lockdowns, all these public transport companies, they didn't have any users. A lot of them stopped their services. So then once the work from home started to slow down and people started going back to work and started needing to get someplace, there wasn't public transportation. So what do? They use Uber. Uber raises its prices. So that's really the one big successful publicly traded startup that's been founded in the last 20 years. That's not much. So I was pretty pessimistic, before generative AI was released. I mean, I followed AI pretty closely, and I was a believer back in the IBM Watson beats Jeopardy era, and I thought, they're going to give us something that's really useful in healthcare.
Uh-huh.
And then it didn't come out. And there's been so many failures, which are documented in my book, Unicorns, Hype, and Bubbles, over the years. And so I've been pessimistic about generative AI from the beginning. Once I heard about generative AI, my first thought was, which I told you earlier, very few industries are selling words or images. It's very small. So how is it going to help? Manufacturing, mining, and all these healthcare, all these industries.
What is the missing link? Is it the fact that we are, so say even with the example of generative AI, if we had, or if we're on an actual path to AGI that could help in those other kinds of industries or other areas, other verticals, what's the barrier? Is it computational power? Is it energy production? Is it just humans' ability to actually produce this thing, this kind of godlike computational program that's going to fix our lives or help us to get better intelligence out of data? What's the missing link? Is it just a matter of time, like so many people think that it will happen inevitably someday as soon as we figure it out? Or is this actually
someday, right?
knowledge?
People say never because someday,
Sure.
but is that someday in 50 years, 100 years? In the 1870s, Charles Babbage and Ada Lovelace came up with these mechanical computers. You look at them and you say, in retrospect, they had a lot of potential, right? A lot of people say this, it has a lot of potential. And I never know what that means. It's like, tell me your methodology for determining whether something has a potential, particularly because you want to know when that potential will realize, right? It isn't about, well, someday. It has to be soon. It took from 1870, really 100 years before computers really began to diffuse, with personal computers first released in 1975. It takes a long time. So, it's going to take a long time, but how long, right? And most experts, the real experts like Jan LeCun and Jeffrey Hinton and these people say that you're not going to get there through scaling, right? So there's this argument that Sam Altman said, we got to make these bigger models. And all we do is have to make it bigger and they got smarter. Well, you just can't approach 100% accuracy no matter how big your model is. That's what many have suggested, and what Altman, I think, believes now, because he released GPT, because in his work on GPT-5, he couldn't get there. And so that's why he ended up, toning it down a little and going for costs and not for more higher accuracy and better performance. So we'll get there. It'll take a long time. And what LeCun and others say is that you need some kind of symbolic model that accompanies it. So for example, a lot of people are making a big deal about mistakes on AI. And so there's these funny pictures going around showing the presidents of the USA and the numbers are all wrong and the pictures are all wrong. And somebody said, well, in that model, you need to be able to say, you can't have two presidents at the same time. Because a lot of them are at the same time, right? They had the president from 1919 to now. They had a whole bunch of these presidents like that. Well, that's a symbolic model. That's no longer this LLM. It's something else. And so people have said that, well, we need a model that develops the representation of the world. You can't just train it on all these things that were said and then expect it to know, to predict what's going to happen or to say how to solve the problem or even to characterize the past. So it's a problem. And so, someday these guys will come up with it because there's a lot of money going to it and they're really smart and they get paid a lot too, right? We haven't mentioned the salary bubble, right? Which is incredible. Yeah. And so, we'll get there someday, but it's going to take a long time.
How do you see that playing out? We've spoken quite a bit so far about what that looks like at a corporate level. But what about at a, if we zoom out to like international relations and states v states, because it's not just company v company and all based in America, but there are national security and global security implications when it comes to AI. And there is an AI race, whether or not there is actually a finish line that people can get to in the near term. There is a race going on now. How is that race impacting how we're building AI, either models or even thinking about building AI at the moment?
Well, if you're trying to get funding, claim that AGI is soon and claim that China might get there first. And then you'll get lots of money, not just from the private sector, but from the government. And so this game has been played for years, that these guys, Eric Schmidt, and, there's a long list of these people who hype it all up. And, read Eric Schmidt's book. I'll tell you, you'll never think he's intelligent after you read his book. There's just nothing in there, right? That's the thing about some of these people. They say these things for so many years and they're wrong for so many years, yet, well, he was the CEO of Google. He must be smart.
Mhm.
You take someone and they do something really good in one area, and then it's assumed that they know everything, right? And then you want to ask them what everything is. So Google, Eric Schmidt did some great things at Google, and he helped them make a lot of money in search. He didn't come up with the search. He just helped them make money in search. And now we think he's an expert on AI, and yet all the books and all his pronouncements, he showed himself not to be an expert. And so yeah, this is a big part though of this global competition, is that Eric Schmidt and others hype it up. We get more money. Donald Trump comes involved. Everybody else becomes involved, right? The UK is probably second in terms of hyping it, because they see it as, wow, this is our big opportunity to catch up. We got a pretty good scientific sector. But there's lots of other countries, right? I'm sure Australia has in mind its own kind of applications or things it could do well in, and Japan and so on. And of course, China is going to keep doing things. And one of the things that's interesting about China's work is that it's doing this with smaller models, open source models. And see, a lot of the problem is that we shouldn't develop these big models. They're going to be too expensive, not only the training costs, but the inference costs when you run them. It's too expensive. So one solution is you release smaller models that are cheaper, and then a company licenses that model. Maybe it's for free because it's open source, and then trains it on the specific things it wants the model to do. So that can work well. So you've got a certain set of products and services that you're selling, and you want your chat bot to answer customer questions about it. Do that. What do you need GPT-5? You need some small model that is really cheap, and then you train it on your own data. It only knows a little part of the world, but it's that part of the world that's relevant to the customers.
That's right.
Right. So this could be done everywhere. And but we've bought into this, scaling baloney from Altman and others. And so it's unfortunate that, other countries might do better.
Yeah. Do you think that now that the LLM or AI cat is out of the bag, lots of people are benefiting from it, or even that small, medium enterprise has a chatbot that's benefiting from their own bespoke LLM or AI program?
Well, first of all, there's different. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, they're not going to go backwards to not having that anymore. So in some regards, AI is here to stay, even if we're not progressing in the same to the same degree that we would like. It's really changing how people do their personal workflows, their business workflows, their investing workflows. But if there is a emperor has no clothes moment in the market and the bubble is exposed, is it just going to be these AI startups, or will the cloud computers go down with it? Will the GPU manufacturers go down with it? Or is there enough of this? Life has really changed now that those supporting industries will continue apace.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to your earlier points. There's many forms of AI. People oftentimes use the term predictive AI, which existed before generative AI. So in predictive AI, it's like a big regression. You got all this data and you come up with some conclusions, and there's all kinds of useful applications. So for example, when you pack things in a truck, or in an airplane, or in a rail car, or in one of those containers, you're looking for an efficient way to do it. If they're all the same size, well, then it's not so hard. But a lot of times there's different things you got to put in there. So you use AI that gives you a little more put in there. And apparently you can now use a robot to load a truck based on this predictive AI. So these things are valuable, and these things have continued. It's just that they're not worth the $10 trillion that generative AI is purported. Right? So all of that predictive AI has continued. It's just kind of behind the scenes. It's kind of stuff that hasn't received a lot of hype because people can't use it. right? Or it takes a lot of skill to use it, right? It takes a lot of statistics and other skills to use it. Whereas generative AI, it's hard to say how much it'll be used, because how much of a price increase does it happen or is required? If the bubble pops, a lot of companies, there'll be a lot of problems. A lot of companies will go bankrupt. There'll be power companies that built too many power centers, right? These power companies are being asked to build power plants to satisfy the data centers. And luckily the power plants are saying, well, then you got to put in the money to build this, because we're not experts at predicting the future demand for AI. So they're smart enough to know that. See, a lot of people should be that way. Well, wait a minute, I don't want to take this risk. So there's going to be a lot of problems for companies, and then there'll be less money. There'll be, the companies will still exist. I'm sure that OpenAI will exist. It's just that the company recapitalized, different people will own it. There'll be big changes there. And it's hard to say what those changes will be, but I think they'll be bigger than what we saw in the dot-com bubble bursting. And after that, generative AI will continue to exist, right? Because there are some applications where it is useful, where it provides more value than its cost, but we don't really know so much where that line should be drawn, because we don't know, because the prices are so out of whack. They have to raise the prices, and raising the prices is probably going to bring the bubble down. It'll be one of the factors. I thought that the poor I thought that the Anthop raising prices would cause OpenAI to raise prices, and that would pop the bubble. That's what I was kind of predicting for this week and next week and the near future. And then I saw the reaction to the GPT-5, and I said, well, here's another reason for the bubble to pause. But, it's hard to predict these things, because all you need is some true believers to keep a stock price high. I mean, Tesla has suffered incredibly in terms of revenues going down. People don't want his cars anymore because they don't like him, because his politics don't agree with them anymore. Not just in the US, but everywhere in the world. Now Trump has thrown him out of the government, right? And so you would think the Tesla stock would have gone down a lot. It went down some, but now it's back up, because there's true believers there that really believe that Musk is a genius. He's going to save. He's going to save Tesla and XAI, which is wait a minute, not XAI. I guess XAI is that's the old Twitter, and that includes the AI. So there's no real AI anymore in Tesla, but still, people believe in Musk, and that allows the Tesla stock price to stay high. Well, it's the same thing with AI. There are people who believe in Sam Altman. There are people who believe in AI for whatever reason. A lot of times it's an emotional reason. That it's inevitable, right? Like you're saying, well, it's going to happen someday, isn't it? So, how do you predict when people will stop believing that it's not going to happen in the near future? It's very hard to do. So, it's hard to give advice to stock people, because I sold out on these things a long time ago. So who am I to say?
Well, often there's a long tail, right? So a few people understand what's happening or can read the figurative tea leaves. But if, like with that Tesla example, when there's people who for a very long time have held a belief, there's a long tail from new information to actually making decisions based on that, information.
It has less to do with really understanding the future potential of technology and understanding the crazy things that investors are going to do. Right. And a lot of these pro investors, they're better at that. They know they can tell whether people are ready to bail or not. So they can wait, and they wait, and they're patient, and they see people shorting the stock, and they say, well, but there's not enough people trying to short the stock for me to sell. Now I'm going to wait.
Do you have any, we can't say advice, but are there any recommendations or things that you think investors should be looking for? Are there those telltale signs that the average, maybe not retail, but sophisticated, active, observant investor should be looking for when it comes to seeing which way the waves are going?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's hard to say. I mean, some of these pros, they talk about revenues like I do. They talk about AGI being way off, but it's hard to say. They probably have other parameters they're looking at more closely, more trends.
So as you're speaking, it seems to me that this generative AI is really leading the pack when it comes to investment and attention and hype. But you also mentioned there's a whole lot of other applications and innovation happening around AI that's not getting the hype. But is that now getting funded because of what's happening with generative AI? Like, is that leading the charge, or is it actually distracting from perhaps the more profitable long-term
not really.
better stuff?
Most of the VC money is going to generative AI. Half
Right.
the GC, half the, and I think though that it helps keep these predictive AI projects going, because a lot of people kind of put it all together.
Right.
But the predictive AI projects are done a lot by user companies. They're not using some big model. They're using it themselves. So,
Yes.
and some companies have been successful. Like Meta claims that it's making a lot from its predictive AI in terms of giving ads to the right people. And so probably Google's doing the same thing. I mean, it's like when we started this and I said that a lot of people are really optimistic about AI because they use it to build their website, right? And so you have to think about the specific applications. So there's these applications where generative AI works well. There's applications where predictive AI works well. But it's the predictive AI. I don't think is going to be anywhere near. It won't be as generative AI. It's going to be small, and some companies will make money from it, but not huge. It isn't huge money. So it's hard to say how what will happen to predictive AI when the bubble bursts.
Yeah.
There may not be a whole slew of projects canceled at companies and things, but it may be just in general that companies say, well, we kind of see AI as not being as big as we thought. These executives who kind of push them together. And so therefore we'll spend less money, because a lot of times the money has been driven by perceptions about the future. So it's not just whether it's bringing benefits right now, but it's perceptions about, well, what could it bring in the future? And if the bubble bursts, then that perception, people are going to be less optimistic about AI in general.
So you're saying, are you saying that it's going to be longer before we get our Jetsons style personal assistant robot doing our dishes and making food for us and running the household? We're not going to get that kind of physical AI in the short time frame that we've been promised.
Well, slowly. I mean, I have one of those vacuum cleaners that that go automatically, goes around the house and stuff, and it ingested one of my power cords the other day and stopped working. But I've learned that I have to lift my feet or it'll keep bumping against me and keep annoying me. So, these things will happen, but it's a slow process. And, it may be so slow that we don't notice. I mean, to me, if you want to understand when there was rapid change, go back to 1870. All you have to do is watch one of these old Westerns or a new Western, right? Nobody's got running water. Nobody's got electricity. There are no cars. There are no lighting. There is no recorded music. There's a whole bunch of things. There's no, electric trains, subways and things. But you go to a movie that's set in, the 1920s, 1910s, everything changes.
Mm-hmm.
All these things changes. I mean, there was so many changes with electricity and running water and things. People's lives changed. And I don't see that happening right now. That's not what we're going through. The tech sector people want to tell you this, the VCs and the startups, because they're selling you on this. They're selling you on this future is going to unfold so quickly. And that's how the money that VCs are giving out is at record levels. It's been record levels for like since 2019, I think, or even earlier, 2017. There was a couple of years where it went way down, but now with generative AI, it's way back. It's back way up. So that's documented in my book, Unicorns, Hype, and Bubbles. So when I wrote that book, I was writing mostly about the startup bubble popping in 2022. And then it got, so I'd written most of it by, mid 2023. And then generative AI took up. So by the time the book came out, right, it has a lot on generative AI in there up through the summer of 2023. But the title and the chapter headings and all that stuff, are a bit humorous because they don't agree. I call it the great startup bubble, and then I call micro bubbles, and generative AI is a micro bubble, whereas generative AI is the mother of all bubbles. So, so you get early with these things, but I forgot exactly where I started with this thread, but
Well, you went back to 1870. So if we do go back to 1870, they could not surely have imagined what life would be like 50 years ahead of them. And then you go to the 1920s. How could they imagine what life would be like by the 70s? And then you go from the 70s, say a bigger jump to today, even in the 80s. So you mentioned 84, you're doing your thesis. Maybe some people like you who are, right at the bleeding edge could kind of crystal ball and see where we were going. But could anybody imagine what life would be like with the internet and mobile phones? I mean, maybe at a philosophical level, like one day this will, we had the Jetsons kind of projecting that.
Well, I was right. Very right on the optimistic side back in the early 2000s, because I was living in Japan and there was this mobile internet that took off, and Japan did it with kind of domestic solution. The service providers told the phone manufacturers to make phones for them that did this or this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And it succeeded. And it didn't succeed in the West. They had this big, manufacturer-driven mobile internet that didn't work. So I wrote two very optimistic books in the early 2000s. One was called Mobile Disruption, which actually didn't sell bad. It sold 3,000, 4,000 copies, which wasn't bad. I was pretty happy with that. But it would have sold a lot more if the mobile internet had taken off in the rest of the world, but it didn't until really 2008, after the iPhone came out in 2007, and they put an app store in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took off. So I was on the optimistic side on that case, and right. And now I'm on the pessimistic side, and I think right. Yeah.
Well, if you're casting your mind forward another, say, 20 years, then where do you think, what do you think technology is going to be like when it comes to industry, when it comes to our personal lives, when it comes to how governments relate?
Well, you'll see some changes in the virtual world and more use of phones and things, and people are going to be. But overall, I have been predicting a continued productivity slowdown. So, consistent with my comments about 1870, I really like Robert Gordon's book, The Rise and Fall of American Growth. I think it's called Economic Growth. So, it received a lot of attention 10 years ago, a lot of attention. But since then, all of he's been pushed away in favor of, we're living to the greatest, the fastest productivity, greatest innovative period of history. And I don't think it is. I think that we're not going to see so many great innovations. There'll be some, it'll be slow, but it's not going to be this big change that we saw really between 1870 and, I should really say 1880. That's when electricity was first produced. So 1880 and 1910, for instance, you're not going to see that kind of change between 2020 and 2050, for instance.
Right. So you'd be in the minority, surely, people who are thinking about the next 20.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I am. I admit it. There's a lot of people who are, a lot of people advising governments. They're all so optimistic about this. But if you want to get the raw data, go read the Reddit. Read Reddit. They have these subreddits on generative AI and things, and you'll find people saying GPT-5 wasn't very good. I've always been a person who wants to go right to the direct user. I want to hear exactly what they're experiencing. I don't use it and say I don't like it. I listen to what those people are saying. I also pay attention to revenues. There's a reason why I pay attention to revenues, because people speak with their money.
Yeah.
Right. When people buy something, they say that they like it. They say that it's worth the money. Now the prices don't reflect the reality. So it's so you put that together with the low revenues for generative AI, and you should be suspicious. And that's basically where I would look. I don't like use it and then say, well, I like it in my work, so therefore,
everyone goes.
That's right. Yeah. It's so that's what I recommend people do. The other thing I recommend you do, particularly for a young person, is every year write down what you think is going to happen the next year or in 5 years, or it doesn't matter what. Don't show anybody, and go back and look at that later.
Interesting.
And then you're going to find is that, because I've been doing this for years, a lot of times I don't write it down, but I think about it. I think, well, I think this is going to happen. And a long time ago, I was very optimistic, because my degree is in physics, my PhD is in engineering. This is my life. I believed that big things were going to happen since I watched America land on the moon in 1969. I was 13 years old. Then Star Trek came out and all these Star Wars movies. We're going to be going to space. That's why I studied physics. Spock was a physicist. This was, it was an emotional response that I had. And most of my view of the future was based on these emotional things, not on, anything very, scientific. It's always great when scientists are making decisions based on predictions, based on emotions and not on predictions. I mean, I didn't know about Moore's law when I was choosing to become a physicist. It wasn't until after I entered the school and I entered the program and talked to people that I realized this was happening. Mm-hmm. So make your predictions, make your, think about what you think is going to happen, and then see what good your predictions are. And what you're going to find is that things happen a lot less slower than you think.
Right. You mentioned earlier, one of the continued use cases for generative AI is video. And it strikes me that information is very easy to come by, but very good data is trickier to come by. And then being able to correctly parse or understand that data, interpret that data is even more difficult, especially in the era where different people are shouting different opinions about either the fact that the data exists at all, or different data sets that they come across, or how are we possibly supposed to, or how do you think about getting data in an age where it's becoming harder and harder? It's still maybe very easy, but becoming less easy to determine the legitimacy of even the things that we see with our own eyes from generative video, for example.
Well, when you're looking, and I mean, news sites, websites all did this. Newspapers all did this for decades. It's been going on for so long. I mean, I remember when I was young, they'd talk about a technology, and they talk about, first, how much money is it generating? Second, is the company making profits? All that hardly even is in the news now, right? What are in the news? What data do they look at? Oh my gosh, some students can't get jobs in the market. Oh my gosh, there's some layoffs. But no one looks at, well, the overall employment rate hasn't gone up. Mm-hmm. The number of computer science graduates has gone up several times in the last 10 years. Maybe that's a reason why they're having trouble getting jobs. You got to be careful with the data and look carefully at it and choose what's data for what situation. And if you're predicting a big change, there should be a lot of data sources that are consistently saying that, not just one, right? Not just, oh my gosh, people are CEOs are announcing unemployment, layoffs. Oh, it must be AI. When actually, there actually is a good site called layoffs.ai. FYI, it gives you the number of announced layoffs. By the way, it's usually announced layoffs that people are talking about, not actual layoffs. When a CEO says he's going to lay people off, that's going to happen later.
Sure.
They're going to lay off people later. It isn't that they laid them off, like they laid off 100 people and then it gets announced they laid off 100 people. It's they made an announcement. But those announcements were much higher a couple of years ago. There was a few months where they were really high. They're not that high now. It's kind of it's very much choosing their own data, right? The tech sector has control of the narrative, right? And narrative is the key. Robert Shiller, Nobel laureate in economics, who wrote a book, Irrational Exuberance, about bubbles, talks a lot about narratives. That's where I got this term from him many years ago. And what was I going to say? You look at the narrative and you have to be careful. And so the tech sector, that's what my point is. The tech sector knows this. They're very good at crafting this narrative. They just constantly spend money. If you look at the amount of money they're spending, they have a lot of money and they spend a lot on putting articles in news sites. They spend a lot of money on paying influencers on social media. They pay people to like posts. They pay people to make positive comments. There's a lot of people out there that are being paid, and well, they have the money. And so you have to be very careful about what you believe.
Is there any way that AI is going to help us to do that, or is it just going to become progressively more difficult?
I don't know. It's just, AI is going to, maybe, but a lot of that is AI for people with money. You have to have money. And so I'm pessimistic that AI is going to save the day on these problems. And, it's maybe someday, right? Never say never. Maybe someday, but it's a long ways off. And the tech bros are always one step ahead of us because they got more money than we do.
They sure do. They sure do. We'd love to finish the show by asking if you're happy to share your most contrarian view. And it might be that a lot of what you shared today is actually quite contrarian in terms of most people are very optimistic about where we're headed and the pace in which we're getting there. Whereas you find yourself less optimistic about where they think we're going. But do you have any other particularly contrarian views where you think our listeners or viewers would be benefited from hearing your perspective that might be in the minority?
Well, a lot of people hate Donald Trump, and I hate him too. But I haven't liked a president since Bill Clinton. We're getting junk for our candidates. And so the big question for me is, why is that? Why are we getting worse candidates? I look back at Clinton, I liked him. And I like the previous guys. I like George Bush Sr., I like Reagan. I even like Carter now, right? Carter, when he died, he got all these positive comments. I'll tell you, when he was a president, people hated him.
Oh, yeah.
Because of what he did, interest rates and stuff. And now people look back and realize, wow, Carter was a pretty decent guy. He had smart advisors. And if you're a Democrat, most people would look and say, well, Reagan, he wasn't that smart, but he had good advisors. He was getting good advice. He was somewhat mainstream compared to what we're getting now, So to me, what I want political parties to do is to address real problems. Don't make all these statements based on your ideology. Oh, I believe in the free market, and therefore I think that AI is going to save us all. Or I'm on the left, and I believe in university research, and therefore I think AI is going to save us all. Because that's a lot what's going on. People have this ideology, and they automatically base their opinion. No, come on, forget about your ideology. Start thinking about things at a working level of how we solve problems. And I think that's a contrarian viewpoint.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right.
Most people have very simple, they have all their conclusions come from some simple ideology.
I mean, that's not just an American problem.
Yeah, it's a global problem. I mean, I'll give you one more thing. Every country that's caught up with the U.S. has subsequently done poorly. And why? And that got to Europe, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Australia, all these countries. Why? Because once you catch up in terms of wages, you have to become good at developing new products from science. Nobody can do it well in the U.S., and the U.S. doesn't even do it well.
Sure.
Right? It's being done badly. We're not getting the science out that science-based technologies that we used to get out back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And so every country is going to face this. I mean, Singapore, I tell Singaporeans, they keep thinking, they think it's so funny America's not doing well, and they don't realize that big changes are needed in Singapore in order to turn science as new technology, and they don't exist yet. Singapore keeps saying, well, our universities are ranked high. It doesn't matter. What are they doing for the people? All these rankings, there's a lot of these silly little metrics that don't mean anything. Think about, you got to think about it at a very low level about how to translate this science, to make sure good science is coming out that actually gets commercialized in the form of new technologies, new products, processes, whatever.
Yeah, that's a whole other show.
It is. Yeah.
And a lot to do with incentives, both at the
Absolutely.
national level, at the company level, at the academic institution level, the personal level. Yeah, man, it's it seems to be that people like yourself, you have this, you have the understanding of how we actually get to a preferred future, but it seems like it's either the narrow path or the one that people just don't want to go down, or is it just like you said before, they already have their pre-established ideas or ideology, and that's the thing that they're defending rather than how to make things better, even for myself.
Yeah. Well, when I was 40 years old, I moved to Japan, and I said, okay, I have a lot of opinions about things. Some of them not very strong opinions, but I had them because all my friends said those things. So I'm moving to Japan. Here's my chance. I'm going to stop giving opinions on some of these subjects that I don't feel like I know very well. And it was very useful, right? There are things that everybody says things that they don't really believe, but other friends say them, so they feel like they have to say them. Find a way not to say them. Find a way to just say, I don't know yet. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I like that. In fact,
okay.
I think we can finish on that as well. So I really, really appreciate you coming on the show today. If people would like to hear more from you, Jeffrey, or find out more of your work, where can they find you online?
Oh, good question. Well, there's my book, Unicorns, Hype, and Bubbles, which came out the end of last year. It came out the end of last year, which is available on Amazon. It's also available in a lot of American bookstores, English bookstores. So it's probably available in Australia, from Harriman House in the UK. There's also LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn, Jeffrey Lee Funk. My Gmail is the same too, jeffreyleefunk@gmail.com. So I post almost every day on LinkedIn. So please follow me there and like and comment on my posts.
Tony, we'll put all those in the show notes as well. But again, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate your perspective and opening our eyes to both markets and AI, what it can do, what it isn't doing, what it can't do, and your perspective on the bubble as well. So I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Off-Chain. We love bringing you great guests like Dr. Funk and hope we've inspired you to learn more about new and emerging technologies, about building the future and how you might be a part of it. As always, please like, subscribe, or better yet, share this episode with a friend and help us spread the word, and join us again next week for another great episode of Off-Chain. Until then, take care.